Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Dream, and you are here for a sub podcast of the It's All Good show. This one is focused on advanced healing tools. And my guest came to me by a referral from someone we're both connected to, and someone we both trust quite a bit. And she came to me and she said, you should meet Cindy Kerr and find out about her, but she's an expert with pendulums, and there's actually a word for what that is, and she's going to teach us that word along with all sorts of other information. I'm really very happy to introduce our guest on Advanced Healing Tools. This is Cindy Kerr, also known as the Health Diviner. Welcome to the It's All Good show, Cindy.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dream. It's a joy to be here. As you mentioned, I'm an advanced healer. I'm a registered nurse for over 4 decades. And that's what started the launch is into healing and medicine, holistic medicine, many, many years ago, was seeing that Western medicine didn't do the job. And I worked many, many different areas, from starting in oncology to ending in birthing babies. So I did the whole spectrum of life and learned that mindset was a huge part, and all of our emotional baggage was an incredibly huge part of the healing process. And so I began doing a ton of research in the 80s and in the 90s of what is it that causes some people to heal and some people not to heal, besides nutrition and exercise, all the basics that were taught in Western medicine. And it opened Pandora's box, as you well know. And it was so incredible because my dad, when I grew up, my dad was a water dowser. But I had placed myself in a very fundamentalist Christian upbringing, not by my parents' choice, but my choice. It must have been some karmic thing. And so I was not real open to my dad's gifts, but he was incredible. When there was a drought in the San Francisco Bay Area in the 70s, they called him to come well witch to find water supplies in the Bay Area to support different businesses in the area during that time period. And I was kind of in awe, but kind of scared of that too. And I think a lot of people are afraid of energy medicine tools, and especially using a pendulum or dowsing rods. Some people have seen dowsing. These are dowsing rods. They're copper. They're very cool. They're for dowsing water. If you're lucky enough to have those. My dad used willow sticks. He liked to find a Y willow stick and use that because it worked really well. It was in alignment. It was in accordance with the earth as a tree. So it's all about being in alignment with the energy. Using a pendulum, a lot of people think it's some kind of a mysterious thing. It really isn't. It's a science. There's the art and science of radiesthesia. And that word is actually a very important word to know because radius, like from radiesthesia, means radiation, the movement of energy in rays. So we know about vector rays and physics and all this. So the science is about the rays, and the thesia part is about the sensation, being able to perceive that, the movement of those rays, the radiesthesia. And when I use a crystal pendulum primarily, and I do what's called mental radiesthesia. There are different forms of feeling the rays or perceiving the rays, but I use mine by asking questions. And a lot of people also think that using a pendulum is a binary system, kind of like yin and yang and yes and no and black and white or duality. It's not just yes and no, because it's a meter. Pendulum doesn't tell you anything. It's strictly your meter. You are the greatest machine there is. And the source of the energy where we plug in is our is our connection with our intuition. Whether you call it connecting to the quantum field or your divine source, whatever you do, that's it. And that's where the answers come from. It comes from we'll call it the global library or the eternal library. Anything you need to know is available 24/7, and you just have to be in alignment with it. So that's the secret sauce to being accurate in what you do. That term, radiesthesia, it wasn't always called that. It was dowsing or witching. It has not very great connotations in the past. And because there was a lot of fear, especially in church, the Catholic Church was very adamant about not doing any kind of divining. Actually, in the Old Testament, it's a sin to divine, because there was so much fear about where the source of that energy was coming from. And of course, it had to be, since it was a big patriarchal based control system, anything that moved away from the control of that group and allowed you to be empowered to connect directly with the divine was not okay. So I'm telling you, it's okay. And it's not only okay, it's incredible. If there was one tool that I could teach everyone in the whole world, it would be how to dowse. And I'm going to use that term dowsing. We know what the science and art is called. It's radiesthesia. It is an honored art and science. And the person that we have to credit that for is a priest. His name was Abbé Mermet, and he was French, and he was the rector at a church or a abbey in Switzerland. And he was a master at dowsing, and he healed people. He could find the right herbs for them. He could find minerals when they needed minerals. He could find water when they needed water. And, there's it's a truth. Whenever there's holy people, there's so-called magic that happens around them. And throughout history, this has been the case. The holy people were the ones that they knew which plants to use for healing. They knew which herbs, which remedies, all the different tools that were required. They could find the water. How did they find the water? I mean, everybody needs water to live. Where did they know where to dig for the wells or the cisterns? How did they know that? Well, there's a secret of how this practice came. It's dowsing. And the Jesuits were the ones that brought dowsing into the Western world. And it was during the Crusades. The Sufis are the masters at this. This is an ancient science, through Sumeria, you name it, from Egyptology all around. This was, in Pharaoh's tombs, there are pendulums. So,
wow.
they knew that there were tools that required, to function in this life. So all of these things have been around, but in the East, where there's way more focus on consciousness, conscious awareness, and tapping into your intuitive divine self. And so the Jesuits, who are teachers by trade and warriors, during the Crusades, they were on the front lines, and they were learning from the Sufi healers. Well, how do you know which plant to use? This person's going to have their leg amputated in our society, and they're like, oh no, we can take care of that. We have things for gangrene. We have all these antibiotics. We have all this stuff. We just have to go look and see where they are. We have to find them. And it was either finding the right plant and finding where it was, because you can douse cartography too of where things are, which is very, very cool. So the Jesuits brought it to the West, but they kept it behind monastic doors for centuries, because it was anathema according to the church. And then in the early 20th century, this Abbé Mermet, he was so skilled at what he did, and everybody would come to him for healing with, terminal illnesses. And so many people were healed of just what was considered radical illnesses of the day. Or if they couldn't, they needed water, or they needed to find some minerals or plants, whatever it was they needed for healing. They'd always come to this guy, and he always came through. And finally, he couldn't stand it any longer. This is my idea of what happened. And he brought it out into the public and he said, this is the tool. It's called radiesthesia. It's a gift from God. It is actually tapping into the empowerment of who we are as beings of, in my words, beings of light. You know, in my perspective, we are spirit having a human experience, and it's been a 180. We've all been told we're horrible beings aspiring to spirituality, and that's the opposite of what we really are. So this is a tool of empowerment. And if I could take my magic wand and tap everyone to have a very profound skill set of one thing, it would be this, because it connects you with your divine self, with your higher self, with your quantum field to get any answer that you want to get. And it also allows you to become really congruent within yourself, to get to know yourself. So it's a super powerful tool in that regard.
Now, before we go any deeper into it, I just have a few questions. Now, you have a very beautiful crystal pendulum there. And by the way, I have to say, one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on the It's All Good show is that I have absolutely loved pendulums. They play a key role in my day-to-day life. There isn't a time that I don't have one on me. My daughter loves them also, same thing. She's always got hers around. And so pendulum as a tool is been, a great thing for us. Now, you have the crystal one. I have normally used metal pendulums. And the reason is I like the weight. I always felt good about the weight. And then I think also, because I've always got it with me, I never had to worry about it breaking or anything like that, even though I have a nice little pouch that I actually keep it in, even though it's metal. And I have two different metal ones. One of them I can open up, and I've got some phenakite inside of it, a very powerful crystal. So I feel really good about that. But recently, I was in contact with a person, and she was getting some messages for me. And we were talking about some things, and she suggested that I should be using a crystal pendulum. And I had just come across some pendulums at the time, and three different types of crystal. I think labradorite, amethyst, and not even sure what the other one is, but three different types. And she said, send them to me. Let me see what they say to me. And it was interesting because one of them, they each had different aspects that I was to work with.
Right.
And a lot of people overlay and project a lot of things, but this woman was spot on about a number of things. So I thought, well, let me see. So one is specific to do healing work on people. One is specific to go back in my past. And I have it written down. I didn't get it out before the show. I'm not sure what the third one was. But what's your take on all of that, or finding? I mean, I know there are wood crystals. I know people that are wood pendulums. I know people that are really into using pendulums, and they use dental floss connected to a washer. And so give us some insight on all of that, because that's just all across the board.
I more than anything, I think spirit wants us to have fun. And that's the one thing we lack a lot of that in our society. We don't know how to have fun. It was grown-ups. So, part of this is fun. There has to be some joy in it. And if we get so serious all the time and we don't have variety, we like variety too. So the truth of it is the pendulum, if we're doing radiesthesia, we're just sensing, we are perceiving the movement of energy. You can do that with anything. You can do that, like you said, with a piece of dental floss and a washer tied to it. I had a very special Rhodesian black ebony pendulum that I started with. and it was very dense, and it was for getting rid of dark energies. At the time, my husband and I owned an audio store in Portland. It was a high-end store, and we cleared all of our systems whenever after every listening session with people, because people brought their energy in and infused the room with their emotions. It was they were demo rooms, and it was to evoke emotion. Music is the greatest healer of all, I think, the frequencies. So clearing the space with a black wood or black pendulum is an amazing thing. You want to get rid, you want to dissipate darkness. So, you know, we can go into the whole crystal thing of all the different ones meaning different things, and you know, it's what it means to you and what it speaks to you intuitively. For you, like you mentioned, labradorite, I lit up inside. I go, oh, labradorite, that one's totally in resonance with you. Whatever you use it for. Amethyst, I wouldn't choose that if you were asking me what would be the best choice for you. I don't have to look at them. I'm reading you. And so it works remotely. I don't even have to see you. And when I do my work, I work remotely with people from all over the world, because as soon as it used to be, I'd have to hear their voice. And now if I just get a text or an email, I've got their energy. The claircognizance is kicked in over clairaudience. Clairaudience was always my strong intuitive power prior. So different pendulum crystal, different types of pendulums. Metal pendulums traditionally are used when you're doing physical radiesthesia, like with earthwork. If you're doing ley lines, if you're doing water dousing, copper, you know, some kind of metal. In Egyptology, there's a whole bunch of studies about using different kinds of metals and different shapes. There's Isis shape. There's the shape that you had with a different you know, cylindrical shaping. And there's reasons for that. There were different reasons for that with when they were doing physical radiesthesia. Unscrewing the top is a real common one of hollowing out either glass or a crystal and putting something that was, Abbe Mermot used that to find people and to find different things. If you were someone's missing person, you could take a piece of their clothing and put it in there and hold it over a map and find where the person was. There was a movie with Russell Crowe called I think the Water Diviner or something like that. Brilliant, about how he found his missing in action sons in World War I. It's worth watching just to understand that there are so many things that we can do. We just think it's yes or no. It's not that. It's you need to find people, you need to find water, you need to find minerals. They use it in mining all the time. I'm in Texas now, and where do you think they found all the oil wells in Texas? Well, they had dowsers. They had oil dowsers. And so, you know, from Houston up through Oklahoma, you know, there's a whole trail of dowsers that found those spots. And it's fascinating to me. Whatever you want to find, you can find. You just have to ask the right questions. You also have to be in the right state of energy space. And the most important thing is to be grounded and centered and aligned with your higher self. And what is that? We're hearing so much now about grounding. I became part of an experiment about 20 years ago. It was David Wolf was involved, and you know, Stephen Sinatra. And it was when the grounding pads and things were first being introduced, because the fellow that Cliff that discovered this was a like a spectrum installer, you know, a internet, or it wasn't internet at the time, but anyway, cable TV installer guy. And he was finding about how the grounding was affecting the quality of interference coming in, the electromagnetic influences. And I knew this in audio. We had the same issues about grounding. That's a whole specialty subject. But if we're not grounded, we're not in full alignment with every part of ourself, all of our energy bodies, our physical, our mental, our auric, our astral, our causal, and our etheric, and all the other, that's the general ones. We want to be coherent. We want to have a coherent space. And you do that by grounding and consciously aligning your energy to center, to your higher self. or your quantum field, whatever that is for you. But consciously doing that. And when you're aligned and centered and grounded and your polarity is normal, this is another thing. You don't have to go to see a polarity therapist. I have a process for doing that, but the easiest way is it's a tool called Mind Gems. It's one of the dozen Mind Gems. And can I teach that?
Oh, absolutely. Please.
So if you go outside and go barefoot in the mornings, all my clients, they know, some of them live where it's snowing. They don't do that. So they can do it mentally. We consciously can close our eyes and see the energy moving down through the body, down through the holy highway, I call it, down the spine, down through the legs, the feet, and connecting to earth. And that's nice if you are actually connecting barefoot to earth. There's a dissipation of ions and all sorts of aberrant frequencies as well that move through us that we don't need. We free ourselves aligned, centered. I'm consciously aware that I'm inviting this perception to move through me as me. And I want my polarity to be in alignment. You know, in electronics, when your polarity is out, you usually have a short circuit of some sort. And so we don't want to be short circuited. We want that circuit flowing fully through us. You know, again, with the understanding I'm spirit having a human experience, and I want that full flow of energy to be fully connected. So you cone your fingers. This is for resetting polarity. It's super easy. And you want to make sure that you've got skin to skin, and you crisscross your hands, and you can put them at your collarbone or shoulder, and you hold it there for 12 seconds. Doesn't matter if it's left over right or right over left. 12 seconds. And you might as well breathe while you're doing it, because breath resets the nervous system. You might as well be in a real calm state, in through your nose and out through your mouth, like you're blowing through a straw. Lots of studies Harvard's done about what happens when you breathe through your nose, out through your mouth. We're not getting into fancy pranayama. We're just breathing to reset the nervous system from fight, flight, freeze, and into rest, digest, create, meditate, the other side of the autonomic nervous system. And after 12 seconds, you switch it. You just switch your hands, hold it for another 12 seconds and breathe. And you can feel the lightness of being while you're doing that. And when you're done, can you feel the peace and harmony? It's super easy. If everybody did this every morning when they woke up and every night before they went to bed, they'd sleep well and they'd wake up to a much brighter day. With my folks, I require that that's the first thing they do, rather than running and grabbing a pendulum and just going, what does my pendulum say? Because your pendulum doesn't say anything. You are the conduit of your intuitive self moving through. And this is simply your meter. That's all it is. So when you pick up, if you have your pendulum, Dr. Dream, you're grounded, you're centered, your polarity is normal right now. And you want to clear your pendulum as well. And you do that by whatever dominant hand you put your pendulum in. I'm a lefty. You take your other hand and you wrap it around it and you give it a hug. And I just bless it and tell it thank you. I appreciate it as my meter. And you can feel when it's time to let go. Sometimes you have to hold it a little bit longer. Metal ones you'll have to hold a little longer because they're dense. The clearer the crystal, the easier it is to work with. So for people learning how to do dowsing, I always recommend that they either get a clear quartz or as clear an amethyst as possible, or citrine to start with, because it's very, very sensitive to the rays. And then you're ready to ask a question at that point. And not before then. Prior to that, you're not in alignment fully.
So every time you want to check anything with your crystal, you go through this process that you just discussed?
I do. But see, I sit all day and I work with people all day. I clear myself between clients, and you always clear the pendulum between questions because it can get confused. It can short circuit. When it short circuits, then our polarity goes off, then we short circuit with it. So then you have to reset your polarity. That's the way to guarantee that your answers are correct. And it's, you know, it is, and right now mine is just like, ask me a question. Kind of cute. You know, a lot of people, they don't want to do it. The outcome of something is mostly, it's mostly designed by what our prelim work is. You know, when you paint a wall or you paint your house, all the work is in the prep work. You know, the paint is the fun stuff. That's the easy stuff. Asking the question, that's the easy stuff. Asking the right question, that's a different thing. But asking the question and having the pendulum spin, that's the easy part. Getting an accurate answer is going to be based on how aligned you are, how in tune you are, how in alignment you are with yourself and with whatever it is you're doing. If you're working with someone for healing, how in tune you are with them. You want to be very in tune. So, yeah.
And what I've heard more times than not is people say to me, I don't trust it.
Right. Right. And I don't trust it because it doesn't give me accurate answers because I'm not doing my homework. I'm not doing my pre-work. And when I ask a question, and let's say I already know what the answer is, if I'm working with someone and I'm going back over history and I say, has this person, for example, has this person had any cancer in their body? And I get a no, and I know it's a yes because I worked with them in that and we've had that issue. Then I have to pause and then I have to ask, am I grounded? Am I grounded? No. You can ask, that's almost like a free question that you'll get a correct answer to. Am I grounded? No, I'm not at that point. But, and then you want to go through the process again. You spend more time grounding, centering, and putting yourself in correct polarity before you start than you actually do doing the work.
Okay, this is all very fascinating. Now, I know some people have said that there are some things they're too attached to the answer. And so they're not comfortable asking that question. They'll call someone else up who has no attachment to the answer, and they have kind of a relationship with them back and forth to check on those things that they're too emotionally connected to. What's your take on that?
Absolutely. The whole key to doing any kind of radiesthesia in any of the forms, whether it's physical and where you're looking for, let's say you're out looking for oil or water, or you're doing healing work, is neutrality. You have to be neutral. You have to be, this is where you want to be. I tell my clients, you want to be Buddhist. You want to be absolutely non-attached to an outcome. You are actually choosing to be a conduit of information. That's it. So a lot of times we can't do our own healing work because we have a vested interest. It's like, oh, I can't ask that question because I don't want it to be a yes, you know, or I don't want that diagnosis. So it's better to have someone else that you trust that is at an equal with you at doing the level of work that you do or better, and have them check for you when you're doing that, because neutrality is essential. Absolutely. I mean, there's so many experiments now that, you know, the outcome is influenced by the actual person doing the experiment. We're powerful, we're energy. And when we emit what our intention is, or a certain outcome, we're going to get that. It'll actually influence the pendulum.
Now, is that question, am I grounded? Is that the very first question you ask after you've gone through the process?
It is. It's the first process. First thing, am I grounded? And right now I'm grounded. Am I centered? I am. Am I in correct polarity? I am. And I always put a bubble of light around myself to just to have my safe space, to have my sacred space that is that's the holy space to work in. And if any of those things are not in alignment for me, then I put everything in order, and then I begin. And I have found that that's the number one reason why people don't get correct answers and why they can't trust their results, is because they don't do the pre-work of making sure they're grounded and centered and their polarity is correct. It's like it.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have an electrical a music system and that it's not wired correctly, you certainly wouldn't try to run music through it. We're not going to try to run the energy through for an answer when it's going to short circuit, or it's not going to be correct what comes out at the other end.
Years and years and years ago, when I first was learning computers, one of the things they said was garbage in, garbage out. And I relate that to the pendulum, to the level and energy that's put into the question. That's as important. Once you've gone through everything you've just explained, that seems to be as important as anything else, is the right question, the right wording.
Absolutely. And being respectful of boundaries, because we aren't meant to go into, some people think that just because you can do this means that you can go into anyone's field and ask all sorts of questions. And to put it bluntly, it's energy rape. It's a violation to go into someone else's field without their permission. And there are certain questions that you don't ask because, for one, you don't have control, and it's really not something that people should be asking. And I'll give you an example of that. The first time someone asked me this, I was kind of stunned, because I thought, gosh, I never would have thought to ask that one, but I don't, it's where the person's mindset was. They had a family member that was dying, and they were due inheritance, and they wanted to know when that person was going to die, because they wanted the inheritance now. And it was like, can you tell me when he's going to die? It's like, oh no, we don't do that. That's not on my okay list. So there's certain things that you don't do. You stay in alignment and integrity with yourself as spirit. That's not my job to inform, whether I know or not. It's not my job to inform anybody of that.
And you just have an intuitive sense what's okay to ask and what's not okay to ask.
Well, if I violate someone's boundaries, I'm not allowed to go into your field, because I have not asked your permission. The only thing that that seems to be public domain is someone's auric core frequency. What are they emanating? If you walk past them on the street, what is the frequency? We all feel it. Well, that person doesn't feel very good. Ooh, that's yucky. We can ask those questions. And if you use a chart, if you use the Hawkins chart, or you use the Abraham Hicks chart, or I've developed my own chart, kind of a combination of all those things that was given to me by spirit, it's, then you know the frequency of what somebody's emanating, but you don't know if it's theirs or if it belongs to someone else, because they're holding someone else's energy. So there's way more questions to ask. We may have perceptions about things and we don't know enough information. For me, it's always about, do I have enough information? And that's a big one. Let's say I looked at your field and I'm not saying it is, okay. Let's say there was discouragement. That's what was emanating, and it's not. But I would say, oh, he's in discouragement. He shouldn't be doing this. He's in discouragement. And the truth of it is, what if you just got off a phone call with someone who gave you some heavy news and you were feeling discouraged for them? And because we share energy, and the idea is to stay as free of other people's energy as possible with our boundaries. But if in that moment somebody checked your field unsolicited, without your permission, and found a frequency and made a judgment about you, that's wrong action. There's a whole ethics that goes with this that a lot of people don't bear in mind. And that's the most skilled people that do this work are incredibly respectful, not only of the earth, but of the people that they're that they're working with. You know, my clients are sacred souls that they've entrusted themselves into my care. And it's my job to maintain that sacred space and treat them accordingly within just in the greatest of love and care and respect. So not going into boundaries of people that I don't know, or someone says, can you check my son's girlfriend? I don't like her. No, I can't do that. I can't do that. You know, you trust your intuition, trust your gut, you know, start to tap into your own feelings. And
But you could ask if the son's girlfriend is a good match for him. Could you
not,
do?
not
No?
without his permission. I'm violating. It's none of my business. This is all about staying in your lane and staying in the light.
Okay. All right. So tell me, I mean, obviously you're doing sessions with people, you know, throughout the day, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but what do you personally use the pendulum for just in your everyday life?
Everything. I started because it's like, this is my best buddy. It's my meter, but it's also a very dear friend. And I've had many pendulums over the years, and they all have personalities. And I'm sure, you know, you have your metal, and if you're using a different one now, you'll get to know the personalities. Some of them are pretty funny. They have a great sense of humor. How do I know that? Just because of intuitively, there's a feel that goes with them. And I started doing this work. I was scared to do this work. Gosh, like coming out of the closet, you know, it's like I douse. And 10 years ago, it was something it was still looked on as kind of a witchy thing. And people were scared. It's like, oh, I don't know about her. And so there was still fear attached to that. Plus I still hadn't obviously released some old religious beliefs as well that no longer served me. And so um, it's changed a lot in the last, I would say in the last 2 years. And I'm sure you found this with the work you're doing out and, you know, bringing scalar energies and music healing and stuff to people. There's an openness now that there wasn't 5 years ago, there wasn't 10 years ago, but something's happened in the last, since COVID, a lot's happened in opening people up and being receptive to alternatives. I'll call it that. It's the real thing. You know, why do we call it the alternative when it's the real thing?
That's
Um,
right.
you know, so you know, there's that going on. So there's a lot more openness. But I started by doing food sensitivities because I was that crazy woman in the grocery store that would look at the organic produce and go, I should buy organic, but I'm being told it's really not organic. And then we come to find out it's not organic because people were faking their organic produce sometimes and putting it in. And this before things come out, that's when I learned that, gosh, I learned an awful lot. I learned that honey was fake. Most of the honeys, and a lot of it was coming from China, and it was fake. And I'd be in stores and I'd go, is this really honey? It's not. And then there would be a whole report of investigation released like a few months later of, you know, the honey is fake, it's coming from China. But I would already know that because I was checking all the food in the grocery store. It was fascinating to me, all these things. I ask questions because I'm curious. I have a really curious mind. And I think that's the thing that keeps people young and keeps them on the cutting edge of learning. When I sit, I want to learn about the human body when I'm doing healing work. I use this in every parameter and dimension of my life, but whether it's from checking food to see if it's healthy or if it is what it actually is, or supplements, that was another big one. Most supplements aren't anything what they say they are in the bottle. And so when I am checking resonance and in the highest good for someone to use a particular whether it's a vitamin replacement or some other kind of nutraceutical, I have to find not only the right nutraceutical, I have to find the right dosage for their body because we're all different. It might say one, but for them, they need two because they're very deficit, how long they need to take it, and, you know, what brand, you know, because I learned really quickly, they aren't all created equal. And most of them, I found like 95% they weren't the real thing. And some of them were really expensive. And I thought, oh, this is really eye-opening. I've learned a lot, just from the energy. And the energy never lies. That's the thing I found as well, is that, again, when you're aligned, centered, grounded, I got my bubble on, and I'm totally just in love with what I'm doing at the moment, of asking these questions, really curious and neutral, and just out of a state of, I don't know. Coming in with that beginner's mind. Again, it's good to be Buddhist in this, doing this work. You want to come in with beginner's mind, total neutrality, and not attached to an outcome. And you learn so much. Quite a few years ago, just as a medical interesting thing, I was working with someone who was having some cognitive problems, but there was also some other things going on in their lymph system. And I kept hearing spirit say, because for me, this work is a combination of psychic, intuitive, and radiesthesia, and all of the psychic gifts put together. It all comes together for me. And spirit said, did you know that the limbic system is connected directly to the lymph system? And that's what you need to be looking at. There's a problem with the connection. It's plugged. And I said, what? No, they're two separate systems, nothing that, no. And it was persistent. It was cute. This voice, my inner voice was playing with me, and it said, oh, you should check it out. Trust me on this. It's the same. You're going to find out. And I'll be darned, a month later, there was some medical research paper that came out that had this great discovery that the limbic lymph system was the same thing. It was all interconnected. And I went, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I think that, I don't know, so much research, we could shortcut so much informational things on a timeline if everybody was able to douse. It would save a lot of time and a lot of money with research grants and things like that, because we could find all sorts. If people knew what questions they wanted to ask,
Right.
then we could leapfrog the whole thing. So
we have a wonderful story back in 2020, after my back-to-back strokes and miraculous recovery and everything. We decided to get a dog. And there were 3 puppies available to us that a gentleman in Dallas had. And he sent 3 pictures. And, we were like, how are we going to figure this out? I said to my wife, we'll print the pictures out. We'll number them. We'll flip them over, and then we will go ahead and use the pendulum and ask which dog is in our highest and best.
Yeah.
And it told us a dog. And then this was interesting. And this is something I'll ask you about after I tell the story. But then my wife said, I think we should ask again. I said, well, sweetie, I have tremendous trust in the answer that I got. I don't need to ask again. It's kind of the arrangement that I have with the pendulum. And I don't want to insult the pendulum by saying, let's play this one more time. And so we went with that one, and there was a FaceTime call before we were to get the dog. And the gentleman said, here, I'm going to show you each of the dogs. And we said, you don't have to. We know exactly which one we want. And he gave us this weird look. It's on FaceTime. And yeah, we said we just sort of checked in on it. We want, and the name that they had given the dog. And he said, well, that's very interesting, because the other 2 dogs are flitting around away from me over in the corners and everything. And this one is not leaving my legs. And so that was our initial process with our dog. Her name is Bliss. And then she's a golden doodle petite. They have like runaway fur. It just grows and grows. And we had read things. Most owners of golden doodles trim their dogs because they don't have the patience to brush them. And so they shear them down really short. We never thought that was a good idea. But then sometimes my wife does all the brushing. She's the patient one. And sometimes she would get a little perturbed by the process. Yeah. So we would ask the pendulum, we would ask Bliss through the pendulum, would she like us to shave her? Answer was always no.
Mhm.
And then it came time to decide whether to get her fixed. And we asked, would you like? And every time the answer is no. And I ask her every time after she goes through her heat cycle, because it's not the most comfortable thing for her to go through. By the way, she's just perfect, never takes her diaper off. She's fastidious about the whole thing. So it's not, it's a beautiful process of honoring her emotions and her body and everything for us. But I thought, well, after each heat cycle, we'll ask her if she still wants it to be this way. And she always says yes. Then last year and most years, we're on the road a majority of the time. We have the RV that I'm in right now that is certainly a comfort zone for her. And we have a soft carrier in the back of our pickup truck inside the truck. Yeah. And we ask and we do these events, these sound healing events where we may be in a place for most of the day, but we can come out and see her and this and that. And we ask, would you rather be in the RV or would you like to be in the truck? And she always wants to be in the truck. And it gives us great peace of mind, knowing that we're connecting with her. We did a metaphysical show, which we never do, but because they had us do an event, they gave us a booth and we said, okay, we'll do it. And just down from us was a pet communicator. And at first we thought, oh, great, you can talk to our dog, see if there's anything she wants us to know or anything like that. And then I asked, and we got a little bit excited about it. And then I asked Liz through the pendulum if she wanted us to connect with this pet communicator so she could tell us anything else. And she literally it was like she laughed. She said, we have a great communication. No, I don't want the pet communicator. And so in a very practical sense in our own lives, that has been one of our greatest stories about the pendulum. Pick the dog with it, asked her, if she, and we call her a hippie doodle because she's got hair out to, it takes after me. But it's a cute story, but it really for us shows the level of trust we have in the process and how we really know, how we have a deep feeling of knowing that this is real.
Thank you for sharing that, because it brings up a really important point as to another reason why people should learn how to be proficient as radiesthetists. And that is when someone is aphasic, they can't speak, they've had a stroke. And or they're animals or a baby. And you haven't tuned yourself really to know. And the nervous system, let's say a new mom for a baby, for example, I've delivered so many babies and, mom's nervous system and their hormones are a little whacked after birth usually, and it takes a while to recalibrate. And it would be really nice when you don't know exactly what that little baby wants, if you have a trusted partner that does this, that can ask what's needed. Is it a diaper? Is it those of us that know what it is, it's no big deal. But if you don't, and you really need to learn, this is a great way to learn what you need to learn. And it's done in a very kind way. Your little dog didn't say, you guys are stupid. How come you can't tell what I want? She didn't do that. She said, oh, good. They're making an effort to communicate with me. And we have this little loop thing going here with the pendulum, but it's her higher self talking to your higher self, and your pendulum is actually still the meter. That's the thing. I go, I'm going to ask my pendulum. No, I don't ask my pendulum. It's my pendulum is my tool of meter. It doesn't give me the answers. My higher self gives me the answers. So you're communicating with your dog at a high level, and it's, but think if somebody had a stroke and you're looking at these, I think how many people, and you've had this experience, maybe not at that extreme, but how many people, how nice would it be to be able to look at somebody and say, I'm having a hard time communicating. Can we do this? I would love to know what you're thinking. How can I best be of service? What can I do for you right now? And be able to ask the questions and get an answer and then feel peace, both parties feeling at peace.
Right.
It's just, it's miraculous And this is our higher self. We're designed to do this. I mean, that's who we are. We are one of the, we have the limitation of the human body and prior beliefs that keep us from understanding that we have telepathy, we have remote viewing, we have all these skill sets that we don't touch out of fear of the unknown, and also fear of moving out of our comfort zone, because it's just a lot easier to not do any of that stuff. So
Right.
there's so many things besides checking food, talking to your dog. My sister got a dog. She wanted a new puppy, same thing. And she'd send me pictures, and the dogs would talk to me, and I'd look at their core frequency. I ask if I can check them out. Yes. To see if this is the right home for them. And so I would go through, scan their bodies, see what physical problems that we could anticipate that we would be needing to work with. And if they wanted to come live with her, if that was the right place, if she was in resonance with them, if they were in resonance with her. And she got a dog that had mange. And she's not someone who wants to take on a project, but this little dog was covered, and its whole family had died in the shelter and from an outbreak of something not very pleasant. And she said, "This dog's calling my heart. It's just tugging at my heart." I said, "He's yours." And so for 6 months, she worked diligently to heal him naturally when they wanted to put him on all sorts of medications and tons, the prednisone and all that. And I said, "He's saying that's not what he wants. He wants to heal naturally." I said, "It's going to be work for you. You have to cook his food. You have to give him real food and take care of him like he was like your little baby, because he is. And he is so healthy now from all that effort. But if we hadn't cleared his field, moved the energies out from the shelter of all the trauma of being there for 8 months, all that kind of stuff, he wouldn't have healed at the same level that he did. And he got a new lease on life because somebody knew how to do this. She's very proficient at this work. But when she gets too entangled, she calls me and says, I'm too close to this. Can you check it out?" So
It's good to have a pendulum buddy.
it is. We all need pendulum buddies. That's for sure.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
I had, one of the things that I do, we have people that call us from wherever they are, whatever state they're in, where we are not, and they say they want to get a Himalayan healing bowl. And I ask them, we ask a number of questions and this and that, and then I'll say, "Do you mind if I check with our pendulum to see what bowl is in your highest and best?" And there's been some very interesting. So I'll ask my pendulum. I always ask my pendulum if I can ask about a certain situation or something like that. So I'm just making sure that it's fine. But one example, a girl in her early 20s in the Midwest, her parents wanted to buy her a bowl. She had just broken up with her boyfriend, was not a good breakup. And so my rational mind immediately was saying to me, it's got to be a heart chakra bowl. And so that's the direction I would have gone with it, left to my own devices of my monkey brain. And but I took my pendulum and asked my pendulum, and it guided us to an A bowl that had a frequency that was 111. And I thought, this is very interesting. I never would have picked this bowl for her. And normally I say, as any other ones we should present, or whatever, because sometimes I feel like it's just better to give choices. And it said no. And so I called them and I said, "Well, here's the bowl and here's the frequency." And the girl started crying. And I said, what's going on? And she said, "That number is very special, connected to my grandfather. And that is the perfect bowl for me." Things that I just would have known nothing about, that the pendulum tapped into the, field, was able to know or guide me to. And, as I say, I would have presented a heart bowl. It probably all would have been fine. because when you get the bowl, it's then your intention that you're working with anyway. But it was a really special moment where I was like, yeah, I like getting my rational mind, my monkey brain out of the way and having the pendulum guide us. We have the bowls are in tubs and we'll say, is it in tub number one? No. Is it in the bowl for this person? Tub number two, tub number three. And it'll say yes on three. And then it's like, is it this one? Is it this one? Is it in the first stack, the second stack, the third stack? And it's become a really great tool. So it's just all these reasons. It's so perfect for you to be on the show today for this because it's such an important tool for us. And I've had a person come and speak kinesiology and everything like that. It was fascinating, really good. Actually, my wife is taken to some of the body sway kinesiology things in the grocery store and things like that. And I like all of that, but I'm still partial to working with pendulums.
Me too. And I just want to empower you to claim your divinity, because your pendulum is not answering you. Your pendulum is your partner in asking the question. You're both tapping into your intuitive self, your higher self. That's where the answers are coming from. It's not coming through your pendulum. And as much as I love my pendulums and they're just the best buddies, they're great, great friends, and I can count on them and tools, they don't give the answer. That's the thing that separates, well, and then maybe this would be an arguable thing for some people, but this is the thing that separates us from almost every other creation, is that ability to have that direct connection with source at a super, super expansive level, to have these higher mental faculties that are absent in a lot of other species. You get to tap into that. There's one thing happening, but there's an expansion that's available to different species. And your higher self is an incredible thing to tap into. That's who you are. And this is just a helper.
This is fascinating because I had made a note here that one of the things I felt that has happened to me working with the pendulum is that I trust my intuition more than I ever have. And I'm more connected to my intuition, so much so that some things I would have always checked with the pendulum, I just say, no, I already know, the answer to this. And I go with that from that deep feeling, not again in the surface mind or brain or whatever, but from that deep feeling. So for you to bring that up right now, I hadn't even gotten to that on my piece of paper over here. It's just divine.
Well, it is. And I, if I can interject here, when the person that reawakened this ability within me is a Qigong master. And he said, Cindy, you're going to use this tool. It's a kindergarten tool. He says, you won't need this. You won't always need this. And I said, it's a pretty good kindergarten tool. I really like it. He said, there'll come a time when you don't need it because it's an intuitive tool. And as you use it, and your confidence just as you said, as your confidence increases in your intuitive knowing, these are what people call the clairs. That's claircognizance. That's just direct knowing. It's your intuition informing you immediately. You don't have to think about it. It's not through the rational mind. It's through the intuitive mind, and it's somatic. You feel it. You're an empath. You feel things. So that's a super gift, is to have that the ability, clear feeling that not only it's the validator for you, if it's whether it's informing you at the gut with an like in human design, or if it's from the heart of your heart just expands and you go, oh, I know that's right. I know it's right. I would love that, because the love expands. It's the way for us. It's our tool. It's our training wheels, but it's amazing. We don't have to get rid of the training wheels. It's a great tool, because it's not something I want to get rid of.
Right.
The other things still flow, and they flow more now than they have ever, because the more I do this, the more open and receptive I am to more information coming in. It's all, if I'm open, that portal, that doorway is open to me. And so the more open you are, the more you use it, the more you trust it. It's like the universe goes, oh, he can trust himself now. Let's watch him trust himself, then you start to do that, and then you open it up to another tier of ability. It's really amazing how that works.
I love that you touched on this, because I've always said I consider myself a multiple modality healing practitioner, and it's sound tools and the pendulum and all sorts of different things. So much so that when we go to do an event, we're towing a 19-foot cargo trailer. I used to be almost envious of people that would show up with just a tarot deck. I'm like, oh, pretty tough getting here to this event with that deck of cards.
Or a pendulum.
Right. But I've always said that at some point we won't need these tools. That we're what I do with some of the healing tools and the sound tools, I'll be able to do just with energy transference or the hands or whatever it is. But until then, it's awfully fun to get to play with all of these wonderful tools. Now, I want to know a little bit about you as the health diviner. I know that you're helping a lot of people. I spent some time on your site. It was very impressive. And so give us an idea, give us some aspects of what you do for your work or your offering, as it were.
Sure. My website, what I do, I haven't had time to change my website for a while, but it evolved as Spirit gave me a template called Your Unique Body Blueprint. And I remember I started as doing food sensitivities because that was easy. People could accept that, and everybody seemed to be allergic to something and didn't know what it was, and everybody wanted to figure it out. And that was so easy for me to do readings for food sensitivities. So, we could see what was a match, and then the different levels of intensity of food sensitivities. That's how it started. And then I started getting very, very sick patients, clients, and it was more than food sensitivities. They had all sorts of things going on energetically that it was a learning curve for me of realizing that, as you mentioned, it's multidimensional. Healing's multidimensional. It's not by the time it hits the physical realm, which is the dense matter portion, it means we haven't paid attention further upstream to the higher frequency nudgings that we've gotten. And so it's expressed itself loudly. It's the big doorbell. And so for me, I found that the physical body is simply the doorbell. And, people get all upset. My body betrayed me. I've got autoimmune. And it's like, your body never betrays you. Your body is your best friend ever. It informs you that something is out of balance. When you get dizzy, what's it telling you? You're out of balance. It's so easy. It's not hard. Spirit would say to me, Cindy, everybody makes it so difficult, you included. It's not that hard. Make it easy. It's easy. And, people would come and they go, oh, I can't see anything. And I said, what is it you don't like that you're seeing in your life right now? Oh, my kids are doing all this kind of stuff. And then I just could be silent, and they go, oh, I don't like what I'm seeing, do I? Mm-mm. So at that level, looking at the physicality, that opened the door for me to ask deeper questions of, if this is the physical body speaking in this way, then what is it connected to? And, we have I believe everything is created twice, first in thought, then in form. And the first thing that thought creates is emotion to support whatever the thought is. So that's the mechanism of how creation happens. That's the recipe. We have a thought, we have an emotion, and then we have an outcome. And if you want to change the outcome, you either have to change the thought or the emotion or both, and if we don't, and the thoughts keep going lower and lower and lower in frequency, and the emotions keep going down, we have an outcome that we don't want. Nobody wants it. So what do? I find what the emotion is, and what the frequency is, it's being held, where it's being held in the body, where it's being held in the auric field, in the astral body, which is the chakras, where it's being held in different parts. And I clear that. And as soon as that energy is cleared, does the person get healed immediately? No, they don't, because they have to shift the thought that created it first.
Right.
The coaching comes in. I work as an intuitive life coach, and I'm certified through Brave Thinking Institute in dream building and in life mastery consulting. And I have a lot of certifications. That's not the thing. The most important thing is I work with empaths. And you know what, Dr. Dream? I didn't ask for that. I do magnetic marketing. Divine Mother's my marketing agent. I don't advertise. I've never advertised. And these people come from all over the world. It's like, how does that even happen? So-and-so, this shaman up in Northern California just sent me to you because he said you needed to clear this in this field because he didn't know how to do that, but you know how to do that. It's like, how does that even happen? But it does. And all these people come and they're all empaths. They're empaths without borders are a disaster. Empaths with borders are the most powerful people on the planet because we feel. We're the canaries in the mine shaft. When anything is off, the empaths are the ones that feel it first. We know when things are out of balance. We know it, we feel it. But if we're not in balance and we don't have, I call it staying in our lane and staying in the light. If we're so busy playing the martyr of saving everybody and healing, trying to heal everybody else and neglecting ourselves, which is the empath way, then we get really, really sick and we're not fulfilling our purpose of service of being the light. I believe our purpose as an empath, you're an empath, I'm speaking to you, is to be the light. And we're not here to fix, heal, save, or do anything for anybody except shine the brightest so they can see their path. And then we get to introduce some fun things for them on that path as well, if they want to participate. So for me, that's my work. And it comes in all forms. I work with animals, I work with people, I work with babies, I have a range, I worked with people who couldn't get pregnant. And one woman right now has twins and she's almost 45 and she's pretty excited about that. And my oldest client's 86 and she's probably the most incredible spiritual teacher and she's out dancing 3 times a week. And I mean, it's such a gift. Every day I wake up and I go, I'm so happy and I'm so blessed that I get to do this. I couldn't think of anything better for me to do. It fulfills my life.
Well, you are absolutely amazing. Your energy is fabulous. I am grateful that we found our way to each other. You can be found, and your website will be in the description of the podcast, but thehealthdiviner.com. As you were talking, I'm like, I'm giving her a new name. She's the Divine Diviner. And I thought that's a double entendre because it's divining the divine, and then it's Cindy being divine as a diviner. And I thought, oh, that's just so perfect. And Dr. Dream DD, divine diviner DD. And anyway, I had a little fun with that. And I had a lot of fun having you as a guest on the It's All Good show. And thank you so much for your time and for your insights, and mostly for the bright light that you are for all of us that are going to see this and for everyone that you come into contact with.
Thank you so much for having me and for the opportunity to share the importance of trusting your intuition and developing the intuition and empowering yourself to believe that we are spirit having a human experience. That's the most important. That's the greatest thing ever, is when we actually realize that. And it's unlimited at that point. There's the skies. There is no limit. The sky's not the limit. We're unlimited.
I love that. And thank you so much. And you have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Many blessings.